There are terrible dads everywhere in fiction, because I guess it's just the price of being a main character. But you know how we do here at Screw Attack? We pour through comics, anime, movies, the works to bring you the most terrible of fictional fathers. So hey, I'm Nervous Nick for Screw Attack's Top 10 Worst Dads.
Number 10.
Our first terrible father is none other than the iconic Darth Vader. Yeah, sure, he turned to the dark side trying to save his family, but considering everything else he's done, it's not the greatest excuse. So after he finds out that his son is alive, he comes up with the meanest way to arrange a father-son hangout ever. In order to get Luke's attention, he captures and tortures his best buddies, and when Vader finally does draw him out of hiding, he greets his kid the only way he knows how, dismembering his own flesh and blood. So now that his little boy is screaming and crying with his hand somewhere at the bottom of a giant tube, Vader figures that now is the best time to ask Luke to join him in betraying everyone he's ever known. And later on, in the same exact moment that Vader finds out that Leia is his daughter, he threatens to abuse her if Luke doesn't join the dark side.
If you will not turn to the dark side, then perhaps she will.
Darth Vader's horrible parenthood has transcended generations, even long after his death. It's no wonder Leia wouldn't forgive Anakin's ghost when he showed up.
Number 9.
So, Goku's a pretty neglectful dad, right? It's a pretty common opinion these days, but hey, at least Goku bothers to spend time with Gohan, as long as Gohan wants to train. You know who's actually worse when you think about it? Naruto Uzumaki. See, Naruto must have forgotten how it felt to be fatherless because he basically does the same to his kids, Boruto and Himawari. Dude, I know being the Hokage of your village is hard work and all, but maybe send just one clone to play with your children? Just one? Better yet, leave a clone to do your work and spend some quality time with your family. What's the point of being able to create clones of yourself if you can't use it to be a good dad, am I right? Sorry, Boruto, but at least your dad's neglect is pushing you to be a better ninja, right? Right? Well, just as long as you don't pull a Tyrion and kill your dad. Hey, that gives me an idea for later. I meant to the top 10, not real life. Not real life!
Number 8.
One unit of measurement for how bad of a father you are would be how many baby mamas you have. It's a highly scientific scale that I just made up. Anyway, to give you an idea of how bad the ancient Greek god Zeus is, he's got like 100 kids or so that he basically abandoned. You've got Helen of Troy, Heracles, Minos, Apollos, Artemis, and a ton of other kids, but those are just the ones we could find the names for. Things get even worse when you realize that Zeus doesn't really take care of his kids after they're born. I mean, they're demigods. How bad could that be, right? Wrong. You've got to remember that Hera hates Zeus's philandering and kind of wants to murder all proof of it. On top of that, demigod children are usually targeted by every other evil force in the world, so something tells me Zeus probably wasn't using his head whenever he was doing the nasty. I meant the other head, you pervert. I'd imagine that paying for new sets of armor every year instead of new school uniforms gives a whole new meaning to the word child support. Zeus. Dude, how many times do I gotta tell you to keep it in your pants, man?
Kill myself. Number 7.
This one really brings back memories of researching Raven vs. Twilight Sparkle. So, in DC Comics, there's this evil demon named TRIGON who is literally made out of hatred. And guess what? He's a really sucky dad. Go figure. This interdimensional demon padre goes around different universes, has sex everywhere, and then ditches his baby mamas all to try raising up an army. So if you're using the same scale we just used on Zeus, he's theoretically even worse. Hey, he's not above it. But somehow having his surviving sons gang up on him to beat him makes TRIGON a proud father? Yeah, what a role model! In his finest moment, TRIGON brainwashes and indentures his Teen Titan daughter, Raven. Yeah, and he forces her to help him destroy Earth and their homeworld of Azarath. Did he really think psychologically breaking Raven was the best way to create an heir? I'm with Raven when she says,
"You are not welcome here."
Number 6.
Okay, I know there's been a lot of abandoning going on in this top 10, but you know something? We're not done yet. Ging from Hunter x Hunter abandoned his son Gon so hard that Gon's sister decided to raise him without ever mentioning their terrible dad. So when Gon does go looking for Ging, I love those names, it turns out that Ging basically set up a hugely difficult scavenger hunt for Gon to solve before he'd find his dad. At one point, Ging tells a death row convict not to go easy on Gon. I mean, kudos for having that much faith in your son, I guess, but how could you know he'd survive if you've never met the kid? This and so many other parts of Gon's journey are so dangerous that Gon nearly dies multiple times. Does that make Ging go visit his son? Nope! In fact, Gon spends like 75% of Hunter x Hunter on a life-threatening journey to find his dad, only for Ging to turn him down because Ging just does not care. Although I gotta say, Ging wants to be a father about as much as I would want to be his son.
Number 5.
When I was a kid, I always lost wrestling matches against my dad. And that was him going easy on me. So it's probably good that he wasn't a maniacal martial artist like Tekken's HEIHACHI Mishima. Cause Heihachi liked to give his son Kazuya life lessons through actual battles and not just play wrestling. But that's not why he's a terrible dad. Heihachi threw 5-year-old Kazuya off of a cliff when he tried to stand up to his dear old dad. Heihachi said that to prove himself, Kazuya had to climb all the way back up the cliff, which he actually did. Except to Heihachi, it just proved that his son was part devil. So he did what any sane dad would do, try to murder his son a second time by chucking him into a volcano. And if that wasn't bad enough, Heihachi even later adopted a replacement son just to annoy Kazuya. Even his illegitimate kid Lars doesn't want to be this guy's son. And who could blame him? With a track record like that, it's only a matter of time before Heihachi tries to throw him off a cliff too.
Number 4.
Oh boy. Let's talk about SHOU Tucker from FULLMETAL ALCHEMIST. The dude is a perfect fit for top 10 worst dads because out of desperation to prove himself, SHOU used his 4-year-old daughter as an experimental guinea pig. He combined sweet, adorable little Nina with a family dog and turned them both into a nightmare creature called a chimera, never to be separated again. If you've seen this show before, you never forgot or forgave this moment.
Big Brother Ed.
But what's worse is that this is his second time doing it too. The first time was when he combined his wife with a creature from his lab so that he could win fame and fortune as a state alchemist. And because he was fresh out of wives, SHOU felt that his only other option was to use his own offspring. And you know what? I'm just glad that he got what he deserved, since Edward gave him a beatdown to remember for the rest of his life. Which wasn't much longer since he got murked in his own home. Thank God.
Number 3.
At number 3 on our list is THANOS, the infamously nihilistic, gauntlet-wearing father. In the comics, he tries to slaughter every 16 to 20-year-old non-human in the galaxy just so that he can find and kill his son Thane. That's nuts! Thanos also rescues Gamora from her planet just to make her his personal assassin. Except that when she realizes that he wants to destroy the entire universe, he tries to kill her too. If that wasn't bad enough, in the movies you find out that he turned Gamora and his other adopted daughter Nebula against each other just to train them to fight. And speaking of Nebula, man, he slowly turned her into a cyborg every time she failed. Yikes! That's one way to raise a vengeful cyborg with daddy issues. It's a wonder that any of Thanos' kids stick around, but the devotion of his kids in the Black Order makes it seem like he's doing something right. I wouldn't mind a personal attack squad. I'm just saying.
Number 2.
And if you thought that your dad was tough on you, count yourself lucky that he wasn't TYWIN Lannister. This Game of Thrones daddy is a ruthless genius who uses his children as pawns in his political schemes. For his daughter Cersei, that means becoming a baby-making machine married to the current who's who in Westeros. And they say that chivalry's dead. Golden Boy Jaime disappoints his father by joining the prestigious Kingsguard since it forbids him from inheriting the Lannister Empire. But the kid who gets it the worst is Tyrion. As a dwarf blamed for his mother's death, Tyrion can do nothing right. When Tywin finds out that Tyrion secretly married a common girl, he has Lannister cards, well, rape her and make Tyrion watch. Charming. TYWIN hates his own son so much that he framed him for murder. Not just any murder, mind you, but the murder of Tyrion's own nephew. Oh yeah, the king. But you know what? TYWIN went out the way that he lived. Crappy.
It's number 1.
Being the worst dad isn't about being mean to the rest of the world. It's more about how horribly you treat your children. We couldn't believe that there was a bad dad who could give anyone from Game of Thrones competition, but surprisingly, oh my gosh, it is Peter Griffin from Family Guy. This obese middle-aged man is evil. He's fathered an unknown amount of children through selling sperm for lessons on impersonating a dial-up modem. Over the years, he and the rest of the Griffin family have also consistently humiliated his daughter Meg. He's hit her with a baseball bat and even shot her in their own home. Family Guy is dark if you think about it. But it gets worse. The kicker is when Peter decides to become a stereotypical redneck and, well, propositions Meg.
I am about to do something to you that you will not remember until you're 40.
Well, hey, it doesn't get much worse than asking to get jiggy with your own daughter, right? Somehow it kinda does. Did you know that Peter and Lois had a 4th kid named Peter Griffin Jr., and the reason we don't see him in the show is because Peter shook the baby to death?
I thought if I shook him enough, he'd stop crying. I was kinda right.
Listen, I wish I didn't know about this either, but this testicle-chinned fat man actually makes me sick. Like, whatever happened to the good old-fashioned values that they talk about in the intro? For our secret number 11, if there's any real-life dad world famous for trying to give Zeus a run for his money, it is Genghis Khan. The dude had like 500 wives, and you know what that means? A lot of kids. Except that these kids weren't allowed to succeed to the throne since they weren't from Genghis's main marriage. Look, if you're gonna have so many kids that about 0.5% of the modern world population are your direct descendants, at least set them up with some hope for the future.